try to turn this along. Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, March 15th. Welcome to school committee. I want to remind everyone that this is being recorded by Westcat, and before we get started, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start, as we always do, with the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. So we're starting tonight with a student recognition. We are recognizing some of our Thurston students who competed in the MathCounts competition and have done very well. Before I bring them up, I just thought that I would challenge the crowd and show you a couple of MathCounts questions so that you know what it is we're honoring them for. So, give you a second to take a look at that if anybody wants to shout out the answer. Tough. Mr. Mullen he's picking up the pen. He's going to do some math. Okay. While you're thinking about that, I'm going to show you two more just so you get the flavor. So, the one we just saw and this one is part of a pair of questions. So you would have 6 minutes to work out these two questions. Take some perseverance. Yeah.
This is doing the one question, right?
I love, they ask what percentage, but then you have to express your answer as a decimal. So.
The nearest 10th.
The nearest 10th, right? Okay. And then final example, this one, there's a team round. So the team gets 10 questions. This was one of the 10. And you would get 20 minutes as a team to answer 10 questions like this one. So I'm going to post these with the solutions online, and you can all take them under timed conditions at home. And then you can check your answers.
Do you have the answer
how you do.
I want to 7 minutes and 20 seconds.
Oh, I don't have the answer here. That's true. Probably. That's going to be. You're getting a no.
Oh, they know the answer. No.
It's okay.
I'm saying.
They're going to be shaking out. So we have tonight, we're honoring 4 students from Thurston tonight. Bailey Jang, Jason Guo, Ellie Durant, and Eric Yamaguchi. And this team won first place in the regional team competition, which is very impressive. This is the best the Thurston team has ever done, so congratulations. They went on to the state competition and were 20th in the state, and everyone, we were very excited with that result. So we have some certificates.
What grade is this?
So what grade are you all in?
I'm in 6.
6?
I'm in 6.
6?
Oh, so it's
Ellie's
all
eight.
school. I
And
see.
8, yeah, everybody, yeah. So we have some certificates here that we'd like to recognize you with. We have an error on the name, so we're going to have to get a new certificate. We missed that one. For Bailey, yes. So we apologize, but we'll get a new certificate to you soon. And I'm wondering if somebody could get some pictures of this. Cameron, got it.
Okay. Barry?
Oh, it's Bailey.
Bailey? Oh, that's what you're saying was wrong?
Yes.
Bailey? I'm sorry.
Come on up.
Yes, got it.
Okay.
Stay up here.
Yep, that's great.
We'll take one
Jason?
group picture.
Where's Jason Lowe?
Eleanor.
I think Ellie is, she's on a Project 351 conference call as we speak. So she's
Okay.
not here, but we will get that to her.
And Eric. Eric Yamaguchi.
One more. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Congratulations.
And I also want to recognize David Lamb, who is the faculty advisor for MathCounts. He's here with us. Congratulations to him as well. And we also would like to recognize Mr. Durant, who is a parent volunteer. He's been a wonderful supporter of this program, really essential for the team. He was part of a group of volunteers that ran it before we even had a faculty volunteer. And I understand, you have to tell me if this is true, that you were heavily involved in MathCounts as a middle school student.
I was.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, great. We have a Westwood hat for you. Look good as a competition here. Cheering them on.
So, congratulations to you all. It's always nice to have, to celebrate our students and the amazing things that they do. And we appreciate you coming here tonight. And, but I will tell you that you don't have to stay if you don't want to. So if you have other things to do, feel free to go. But if you'd like to stay, you're always welcome.
We trying to get to.
Just out.
So I also just want to mention a couple other things. Like, I feel like a little good news. Tough weather week, you know, we want to talk about some good things. So a couple of other good news on the students front. So it turns out that our high school robotics team was nominated by Senator Rush for a grant from the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, which is a trade association, and they have awarded Westwood Robotics a $2,000 unrestricted grant to support the program, which is very exciting. And just sort of an added piece of information. So Westwood Robotics is actually its own 501c3 organization because the kids did all the paperwork so that they could receive grants. So congratulations to them. And on April 23rd, Senator Rush and Representative McMurtry are going to be coming out to present the grant. So we appreciate Senator Rush's support a great deal. Thank you note, yes. More good news, the girls' ice hockey team was named the recipient of the James Malloy Ice Hockey Team Sportsmanship Award for 2018. We love it when our student athletes are recognized for that kind of thing. The team captains are going to be honored this weekend at the TD Garden. And they're a remarkable group of girls. They volunteer at Rosie's Place, a shelter for women in Boston, and also with the Boston Bear Cubs, which is a hockey program for children with special needs. So they are really fantastic citizens as well as great hockey players. So congratulations to them also. I'm going to put in a plug for 2 events. So Encounters with the Arts is coming up on March 22nd at 7 p.m. at the high school. It's a showcase of arts programs in the district. So it's performing arts, visual arts, our video program, and it's really one of my favorite nights of the year. It's a wonderful evening if you're available on that night, and suitable for kids of all ages. So, you know, bring young kids. They open up the art studios. High school kids work with elementary kids if they want to try out the potter's wheel or do different projects. It's a fun evening. The high school musical, The Drowsy Chaperone, is going up in 15 minutes. And but don't worry, there are other opportunities to see them tomorrow night at 7:30, and also Saturday there's a matinee at 2:30 as well. So lots of good stuff happening. And I meant to mention the Martha Jones stock market game. Tell us about that.
I know, so we should maybe next week, next month.
We could bring
her.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we have a surprise for you.
Yeah,
But
is that
yes,
okay?
yes,
'Cause I think she'd love to come.
we had a national winner that
Yes,
we need
yeah.
to bring in, so we'll bring her in as
It was
well.
all over social media.
She is all over social
Yeah, she
media,
is.
yes, yeah, that's great. So, in other news, we have completed our middle school principal search, as you know. We announced that we have hired Michael Redmond as the next principal of Thurston Middle School. He's currently a principal in Vermont, the St. Johnsbury School. We were lucky, we had a really great candidate pool, 2 impressive finalists, and we think that Matt's going to be a wonderful addition here. He is actually going to be in the district next week. We have a big leadership team meeting around hiring practices, and he's going to take the day off from Vermont and come join us for that, which is awesome. And we hope to arrange some times for parents to be able to meet him, before the next year. I think it was a great process. I know that Tony, you participated in it, and if you want to.
No, it was a great pool. I thought everyone in the 5 interviews that we did was phenomenal. And I think Mike is going to really make a big hit with the staff, parents, the kids, and he's going to bring a different perspective, which I really like. So kudos to you for bringing a little different type of diversity. I think we have some new ideas, and I'm excited to be part of a great team.
I appreciate you saying that. We thought about that, Abby, Allison, and I. We thought, let's shape up things on the team a little bit. And we hired somebody who seems like he's going to bring an interesting perspective and add some value to the group. So I'm excited about that. Great. Related to that, I also announced last week that we have hired Matt Collins to be the permanent assistant principal at Thurston. He's been the interim this year. He's effectively had about a 7-month interview at this point, and he's been doing a wonderful job. I was really struck during the principal interview process how many people in their feedback forms, unsolicited, encouraged me to consider hiring Matt for the assistant principal permanent job. And I think it just speaks to the level of trust that he has gained with the community in the short time he's been in that role. So we are excited to have him stay with us, and I think that will provide some good continuity as we move to next year. That's great. That's that. Let's see. Oops. What's the building project? So I want to update you on what's happening with our building project community engagement plan. We've been busy since the last meeting. So as you know, the first weekend in March, we did 2 days of building tours on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And I won't say that they were attended by throngs of people, but I think that for the people who did attend, they were really informative. And in some ways, just as important, they were learning some things, but we also were able to learn from them because we were really able to talk to people about the project and hear their questions. So it was helpful. The Westwood Media Center filmed all tours at all 3 of the buildings, and those should be up on their website soon. So if members of the public missed the tour, they can take the tour virtually. I would encourage people to do that. I attended the Martha Jones PTO and the high school PTO meetings, presented there. Unfortunately, we had to postpone the Sheehan and preschool PTO meetings because of weather, but we're rescheduling those. I was interviewed today on Inside Westwood with the Westwood Media Center. So this is my second appearance. I'm hoping to become a regular Inside Westwood. And so I was interviewed about sort of where we are with the building project. That should be up on their website by next week. You may have seen that we had an article in the newspaper about the building project, and the town newsletter that gets mailed to all residents came out today. We got the front page. So we're really trying very hard to get the word out about the process, and we've been using social media channels as well. So up on the screen, we have lots of things still scheduled. Our next meeting is we have a community forum on March 20th at 7 p.m. the Hanley School Gym. This is open not just to members of the school committee, residents, anyone is welcome to attend that. We'll do sort of a brief presentation and then open things up for questions or feedback. I'll be attending the Deerfield PTO meeting the next night on the 21st. And then we had to reschedule the daytime community forum. So that will be Thursday, March 22nd at 9 a.m. in the Sheehan School Library. And we've already rescheduled the Sheehan PTA meeting to April 3rd. So we'll be making the rounds.
Seem to be doing a great job of getting the word out. Are we doing any other tours? Closer to the term?
Yeah, well, I think we'll do that. I mean, I'm thinking like next year when we're in a sort of a different, when we're closer to some other decisions, we can do more tours. And actually, so I'm aware that March 20th, which has been our community forum date for some time, now is conflicting with the rescheduled FinCom and rescheduled planning board meetings because they got snowed out. And so we're gonna go ahead with our March 20th meeting, but we're in the process of identifying a date for another community forum. So if people can't make it to this one, you know, we wanna make sure everyone has the opportunity. So sometime in early April, we'll have another community forum for residents. Okay. So that's the communication part. I also want to mention that Heath and I were at FinCom for the second time to talk about the warrant article that will be the school committee's warrant article at town meeting this spring. And so this is a warrant article that's related to securing the approval to borrow the funding needed for the feasibility study. So we just got invited into the eligibility phase with MSBA. One of the deliverables for the eligibility phase is to secure this funding to be eligible then to go to the next phase, which is called the feasibility study. And so I just want to clarify a couple of things for people. I don't know, this is minuscule, I apologize. But the warrant article is to secure approval for the town to borrow an amount not to exceed $1.7 million, which will fund the feasibility study. And just to try to clarify what that money would be used for, so once you get into the feasibility stage, we would contract an OPM, which is an owner's project manager, somebody where this is really their expertise, and then they, you know, are overseeing a lot of the details of the process for us. So that is somebody that the town employs. That's not an NSBA employee, that's our project manager. The money is also used for design services for an architect. And so during the feasibility study, which is 30 months in duration, we do what's called preliminary design proposals. And that's when you start, the architect starts working with the community to look at all the possible design solutions. We did some work that was similar to that a couple of years ago, and I'm confident that that work will be useful in this process. And I actually hope that we'll be able to keep the cost of this phase down to some extent because we can use some of that work. But you do the preliminary design proposals, and it's kind of like a funnel. So you've got all these possible ideas, and then we somehow have to whittle down the options to arrive at our preferred schematic report, is what MSBA calls it. And that's sort of our preferred option, how we think we would like to go forward. And once we decide that, then the architect actually creates a schematic design. So that's when they're really like talking about classroom configurations and placement on the site and, you know, all of those things. And that kind of gets us to the end of the feasibility study. And it's at that point that you're really saying to the community, okay, now we want to go forward and fund the entire project, right? This feasibility study funding also pays for any environmental or site study or testing that has to be done through that design process. And then there's money in there that they kind of call other, which is, it's really contingency funding, right? Like if you do the environmental study and you find something and you think, well, now we've got to do X, Y, and Z or study this further, you know, you have some other contingency money in there. We arrived at this estimate. We've kind of been saying $1 million to $1.5 million, and I have to be clear that was based on, you know, not much, because when we first started talking about it, all we knew was that we were invited in. And so Heath really did some due diligence here. We talked with people at MSBA, we got some comp data from other communities that have been through this, talked to some neighboring towns, and also worked with an architect to say, you know, what do we think the cost of a project like ours would be? And for each of these categories, they've given us ranges. 1.75 million is if you add up the outer limit of the range for each of those categories. So we really hope that it will not, in fact, be this amount. And just to clarify for people, if the borrowing is approved, you don't go out and borrow 1.75 million then, you borrow as needed, as you go. And I want to be clear, I got asked a question, and I realized afterwards, I don't think I understood what the person was asking me. So, approval of this article doesn't involve an override. I think maybe there's been some confusion about this for some reason. I just want to be clear, in case that is something people are concerned about, that the town would then determine how to fund the short-term debt payments. And then, long-term, if the project goes forward, then this amount that was borrowed for the feasibility study gets rolled into the overall cost of the project. So I think what we haven't been clear about is if the project goes forward, this money would still be subject to the reimbursement from MSBA.
Okay.
Not all of it, because some of the other could end up being like legal services. They have a few things they exclude, but by and large, the design services, all of that would be subject to that reimbursement formula. So I hope that's helpful.
So Keith, the study that SSMI did 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, the master plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what part of that can be used? Because we just did it.
Well, exactly, so we just did it, so it's still current. So instead of having, let's say, during the feasibility study, all the engineers and architects go through all of our buildings,
Right.
we've already had that done. That's
Right.
already been vetted.
So that's a big savings.
That would be useful for, during this process.
So they will reuse it, we're not gonna
Yeah,
have to.
we actually submitted, I submitted that with the SOI.
Okay.
So the state already has it in their hands as well.
All right, and then we will have plans once we get out of this phase?
Through this phase?
Yeah,
yes.
so when whatever option we choose, we'll have renderings of,
The schematic.
Yeah,
so,
that's just prior to construction.
so I know when we did the high school, that wasn't the same process, correct?
Yeah.
I think that this feasibility study was not
This whole
part of the
process was
MSBA
different.
process. It was
Okay.
all
That's
different.
right, yeah.
Because
It was a
that's.
different MSBA at that
It's a
point, it was a
different
school building
organization.
authority,
Right.
SBA.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Only as you've met with the FinCom, you know, what kinds of questions have they been asking you, what are their concerns?
Well, I think I'm trying to answer some of the things that they've been asking us tonight. I mean, I think really the question is like, what do you get for your 1.75 million? You know, and so we're trying to be as clear about that as we can be. And it occurred to me that I think we didn't make explicit that this would also be subject to the reimbursement if the project went forward, right?
But as far as town priorities of needed things, is this,
I don't get any sense from the FinCom, there's a question about this in the priority list. No, I mean, I think the selectmen have been very supportive.
Yeah, they've been clear, the
Very
selectmen,
clear.
that this is a top priority.
Yeah.
So that doesn't seem to be a concern. The concern is that if we don't get the support at the next town meeting, right, it's the 2/3 vote, is that?
Yeah, so borrowing requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting. I mean, the concern, honestly, is that if we don't get this appropriation, then we won't be eligible to move
Right,
on with
absolutely.
MSBA, and so that would be great. I mean, you know, we have to secure we have to secure this appropriation by the end of our eligibility phase, which is by next February. But we thought it made, you know, rather than having to do some kind of fall town meeting, we thought it made most sense to go ahead, sorry.
So the eligibility is due February 19.
19.
And then most of those design services will be doing the next year-long feasibility.
After that.
Got it, okay.
After that, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So God forbid it goes down one time, you have another shot at it the next year?
Yes, we'd like to avoid that, but yeah, but yes, I mean, God forbid it goes down, yeah, we could go to fall town meeting if we had to. It's, the expiration date on the offer from MSBA is February of 2019. If we don't have the money for the feasibility study by that point, they won't pull this forward.
Right, and I think it'd be nice to show that we have solidarity in the town, that people are behind us, I mean, that's what they want to see, is that we're a town that supports its schools and supports this project. So it would be important for people to come out to town meeting,
Yeah.
and support this.
So the last, we did get asked a question when you and I were in front of the selectmen that I'm still working on, and that is, what's the role of the permanent building committee in this process, and at what point are they really involved? And so we had a conference call with our project coordinator at MSBA, and he is supposed to be getting us something clear, you know, hopefully he said by the end of this week, so that's tomorrow. So I will get back to you when I have a better answer on that issue.
And I also think that we should clarify, because this has been a question too, it's come up about, you know, the study from 2 years ago, and people are still talking, thinking that we're building a super school at Hamlin. That continues, I keep hearing that from folks. And so we want to make that crystal clear that at this point, that is not the case, that even though we will be using much of what we got from the last study, there is no decision without the town. So.
There's no decision without the town, definitely. I mean, we very much want to engage people. And secondly, we are now in the process with MSBA, and we cannot have any kind of decision because they have a very prescribed process, and they have to be part of that conversation. So no decision has been made, and all options are on the table.
You know, the one comment that I have heard from some of the income people is that they thought the was, to the architect, what we were,
Budgeted
yeah, was high.
for the architect,
Yeah.
for the,
No, for the architects.
The range.
well, there was a, you mean the designer?
Yeah, but that is the architect, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, that's the highest part of this whole feasibility. Like, we looked at other towns, like Eden has one, you know, needed one at 950. So, like, we didn't do the highest level, but we, you know, we gauged what we were asking for, sort of in the middle to high range. Because we only get a range because it depends on the designer. One designer could be $100,000 less than another designer.
Well, it
Whatever
also
designer
depends on
you
what
pick.
we end up with, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we felt like we wanted to be somewhat conservative in this estimate, because
Yeah.
obviously, you know, I mean, we need to have enough money to fund the feasibility
You
study.
don't have to go back and ask for it.
We don't want to go back and ask for more, and so we were, this is a pretty conservative number, and we very much hope that in reality, it will come in under that. Having said that, we checked with some other towns, Medfield, they just got invited in, their articles for 2 million, so we're coming in a little lower.
What are they doing?
They're doing elementary
Elementary.
school.
For $2 million?
No.
No, yeah.
Just for
Feasibility?
Yeah,
Right.
so, now MSBA, you know, thought that that was a little high. But MSBA doesn't prescribe, they don't give you a number. They give you like history of other towns, and so you come up with your own range. They won't tell you exactly.
Interesting.
So, that's that, so things are moving forward with that. Wanted to say a couple words about the safety and security task force plan. So back in December, we had talked about sort of reconvening our safety and security task force that did this work 5 years ago in conjunction with state police and the DA's office and the Westwood police. So that's in the works, and some things have developed subsequently. So two things. First of all, there is going to be another warrant article, a selectmen's article, for town meeting to secure funding to do a comprehensive safety and security review of municipal buildings and related to school buildings. So in conversation with the town, I explained that the school department is already in process on this, but that what would be helpful is if we were able to secure funding through the town meeting process for implementation of recommendations that may come out of our review. So if there were equipment that we needed or what have you. So that's in process. And as sort of part of this, last week, Keith and I, and actually Donna Tobin, along with Chief Silva and Chief Deckers and Mike Gillette, interviewed some different firms that do this kind of work. And
Do what, provide security or assess security?
assess. They do sort of risk assessment. And we're waiting, in about another week, we should be getting back a proposal for a scope of work from this one company that we were very impressed with, who really sounded like they have a lot of experience, and from my perspective, really understand that they have experience in many different industries, but in schools. And they understand that schools have to be a particular kind of environment, right? That we can't be in, an armed fortress. And they seem to really understand some things about the environment, which was important to me. So we're waiting to hear back from them to get their proposal. And assuming that that looks reasonable, then they would be able to do sort of this initial assessment of all of our buildings and our protocols and whatnot, probably in about 90 days, which would work well for us because if there are things that we want to implement or training we need to provide, then we could be planning to roll that out in the fall when we're typically doing all those kinds of things. So that is in the works.
So the selectmen saying they're prepared to put an article on the town meeting to help fund the assessment. Will they put one on there to fund the security measures that we want to implement later?
The wording of the article, I believe, is going to be inclusive of all of those things. Because I sort of emphasized that in terms of the assessment, we were already planning to do that this spring, like we were planning to do that. But it would be helpful to have funding. We don't know what the recommendations are going to be, right, or what the cost might be. It would be helpful to know that we have some funding to implement things going forward.
So can I understand the scope? Safety and security, and in particular, I think I know what security is, but safety.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask is in the lens of having power outages,
Oh.
you know, where there's 10-year-old basketball players in Thurston and it goes completely pitch dark. You know, are we prepared for emergencies? I think safety as well. Is that in scope or is that a different?
Well, that's a good question. I hadn't thought of that particular scenario, but
It's a real scenario.
that is interesting, and we can try to clarify that with them. I mean, yeah, I mean, I have the impression that they're thinking of safety and security fairly broadly. And what they do is they come in and they literally go through like all of our buildings. And so they're looking at like physical plant, right? They're looking at where we got our cameras, and we have enough cameras, if they're the right cameras, and all that kind of stuff. They literally will look at every door.
I think they're looking at the envelope first.
The envelope first. But then they also will be interviewing a wide variety of people and taking a look at all the protocols that we have in place and whether or not that seems sufficient and reasonable, and if they reflect best practices, you know, all of those types of things. So I think it's pretty.
Well, maybe let's see what comes out of it.
Yeah, we'll see what comes out of it.
Maybe for discussion for next year's capital budget, but I think in light of what's happened the last few weeks, I'm not sure our capital, some of the things, we need to take a look at, make sure our lighting and everything else is equipped to deal with things, the fact that people are there when it's not lighting.
Yeah, I don't know about that, so I certainly can ask, and that will be something we can follow up on when we.
But ultimately, it's an operational budget issue. If you have to put more details for cops in schools, well then, that's a funding issue that the municipal side has to assist
Well,
with.
that would be.
In the high school, that's an emergency.
So it's a big deal to get a generator for the middle school, and then that would take care of the problem?
Well, very expensive.
Okay, well, then that's something.
I guess it's next year's budget, but I think I'd like to, next year, dial deeper on the capital. And I want to make sure we're utilizing that.
Great. Okay, so stay tuned on that. And J-term, yes. Okay, so quick update on high school J-term. So I think we're getting close. J-term, it's exciting. So we
Or
have.
farther.
Or further, depending on, I guess, the weather. So we've done our initial course placement for J-term, and I just have some stats up here. So we asked kids to indicate, I think I mentioned we've done a shopping period where they got to go attend their presentations, and then they indicated their top 5 choices. And we were able to place 58% of students into their first choice, 89% of kids got one of their top 2, and 97% of kids received one of their top 3 choices. And so we were really pleased with that outcome. A hallmark of J-term is that we want people to be really invested and excited in what they're doing, so this was great. We have 36 courses offered in total. We're ending up with about 20 kids per class. And so things are going pretty well. We're sort of working on our remaining needs. We have some logistical planning to do. We are developing our plan about how we're going to assess, hopefully, the success of J-term and really decide if we're going to do it again and all of those things. We have a lot of courses that involve travel, day trips, so we're going to be doing some permission slip things with parents. I should note that when kids got their J-term course placement, their parents got a letter saying, here's the course that they've been placed into, this is the description, anything unique to that course that they needed to know, so that parents did, have the option to say, I don't want my kid to take that particular course. That didn't happen much. We're beginning to order our equipment and supplies, and thinking about how we're going to assign IAs for special education needs. So things are really off and running, and if anybody's interested in looking at all the course descriptions, we have this great website. It's whsjtron.org. And then lastly, I talked to Carol about actually bumping the report of entry fundings to next month. Our weather days have postponed our leadership team meetings a couple times, so I haven't been able to vet it with them first. So I'll talk to you about that in April. But I do want to just follow up on a couple of questions that came up last month from the committee. Remember, I was proposing, and you ultimately voted to create a buffer zone at University Station. Mm-hmm. So there were some questions that came up, and then during public participation, and I posed some questions to Nora Locknane just to make sure that we are dealing in accurate factual information when we're thinking about these things. So just to clarify here, people had some questions about University Station, and I am sure that this is accurate. So phase 1 was 350 rental units. It's now fully built out. The estimate that we got from the study, the impact study that we did, was for between 49 and 63 students. As of today, we have 38 students residing at University Station in the district. Last month it was 39, but we've lost somebody since then. And you'd asked about the mitigation payment, and just to confirm, we did receive a mitigation payment from the developer prior to the start of the project. And the idea was this is some money that we could use if it turned out that we had more than 63 students and we needed to do something about that.
So where is that money?
So we have that, right?
Yeah, it's in a cash on
School committee stipends, maybe?
So divvying it up. So it's there in the event that we, have something that we need to do. Phase 2 has now been approved, so phase 2 is 100 condos. The estimate, and this is from the peer review study, so the one that we did, is for up to 12 students coming out of phase 2. You had asked last month, and I said I would check, is there any opportunity to negotiate an additional litigation payment? Sadly, there is not. So
I have a question.
Okay.
All right, it says we can't renegotiate because we haven't reached that 63 number, right?
Yeah.
What if the number goes up prior to?
Yeah, there's still not an opportunity. So in other words, the negotiating has all been done. Phase 2 has been approved, and the reasoning was that we were still so far under this estimate of 63.
Okay.
So the same group that estimated 49 is 63 and overshot is the same group that estimated 12?
No, I don't think it was the same person who did, or company that did the study.
It's a different company that's doing the building, so it was some.
Right. Well, and there's been 2, so the developer did its own study and came up with a number that was a little less than 12, but then the peer review study that the town did, that's up to 12 students. Yeah.
What is the breakdown of 100 condos? 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom?
No, it's 1 and 2 bedroom.
1 and 2.
And it's not quite 50-50, it's like 60-40, but I can't remember in what direction it is.
The area for sale, when are they on sale?
Oh, they're just starting, so that's gonna be a while. And then the question was about phase 3. So way back when University Station was first approved, it was approved for up to 650 residential units. So now we've had 350 in phase 1, 100 in phase 2. It's changed from rentals to condos now in phase 2. So there's this theoretical balance of 200 additional units possible under the original approval. However, at this point, any additional residential units would require either a planning board special permit or a town meeting approval, and even if it were approved at town meeting, it would then have to come before the planning board again for some kind of special permitting process. The Board of Selectmen and the developer, however, recently reached this agreement that there can be no additional housing considered until they've done significant construction, commercial development, and further, that any additional housing component has to be offset by 3 times as much commercial floor area as residential area. And so my understanding is that that agreement makes additional residential units very unlikely, given like how much space there is to do this. So all of those parameters are in there, and it seems very unlikely that there's going to be additional housing coming out of phase 3 of the University Station. But I know that, you know, what people keep saying is, well, there's going to be another 200. But it does not appear that that is the case. So that's University Station, and then there are some other developments that people asked about. There were numbers being thrown about, so I just wanted to make sure that we have the real numbers, that there are these apartments at 331 Washington Street. It's 12, so they're currently built, 12 one-bedroom apartments, 10 are occupied as of this moment, and none of those apartments currently have school-age children. Then there's this proposed Islington redevelopment project, part of which is a proposal for this mixed-use building that would have 18 condos. There's been an impact study done for that. The estimate coming out of those 18 condos is up to 3 students. Just to be clear, Washington Street, that's in the Hanlon district. And then you had asked, I think, Josepha, about Westwood Estates. That's the subdivision over on Canton Street. Yeah. So that's 10 single-family homes. It's a different zone, right? Different zoning there. And so the planning board doesn't have any legal authority to consider fiscal impacts of that subdivision. That's
And
not.
where is that one?
It's on Canton Street, that's where, they took a house down,
Oh, yeah.
took that house down to the road and.
Yeah. So that's 10 single-family homes, and so, you know, estimate, that could contribute like 10 to 30 students. I mean, right, I'm figuring it could result in 10 to 30 students. And because, again, it's a different kind of project, right, there's really no opportunity for mitigation from the
And that's in down.
That is in down. Yeah.
And when are they building, do you know, when they?
Yeah, they've already,
They
well,
started
they're
building.
marketing, they've sold one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, we're keeping our eye on that ball,
Yeah.
and thinking about that. And the other thing that I just think we should be keeping our eye on is that some of the different things that are being proposed right now could have some implications for our 40B status. So, you know, and I'm not a 40B expert, but as I recall, that you have to have 10% of your housing inventory designated as affordable housing, right? Or developers would be, so if you go below that threshold, then a developer would be able to come in and basically build without some of the restrictions that we're able to impose if we are at 10%. And I was curious about that. I asked Nora some questions about that, because that's been happening in Needham. They have some big buildings going up.
I think one of the things that happened was that the Westwood Glen, what's the name?
Westwood Glen.
Westwood Glen is no longer under the affordable.
Right,
So that whole complex is no longer, the numbers aren't there.
right.
So that's decreased our.
Yeah, but I thought this apartment rental thing counted for us for the whole project here, and so we're clearly above the 10%.
They,
That was part of the
that's,
plan.
there's been some, I think, some questions, the whole thing.
I thought that's what they said going into it, that was the whole point of it.
So you're changing, somehow, I mean, obviously, if you designate a portion of it as affordable housing, you change your numerator, but then you have more units, so you're changing your
Yeah,
denominator as
exactly.
well. And there are some technical things that I don't know all the ins and outs of, so I don't want to misspeak, but, and you can do the math differently for rentals as opposed to condos, I think. So I think that's part of the.
And there were some other developments going into it, there was some on High Street also.
Yeah. Right. So I just throw that out there, that I think that's something that this group should be paying attention to, because obviously if the town sort of dip below that 10%, that could have some implications, and we've seen that happen in some other communities where developers come in and they build, you know, there aren't the same kind of height requirements on the buildings, and you know, towns then don't have the same kind of influence to say, well, we'd like 1 and 2 bedrooms, you know, or 3 bedrooms, and all that. So just something to be thinking about for the future. Okay. With that, one other thing. We had visitors from Ireland today, so just
Oh.
wanted to throw that out. So thanks to Charlie Donahue. We got to spend a couple of hours with some folks from Ireland who are at a university there and work in teacher training and teacher preparation at the university level, and also are very interested in STEM education. And so we had a great conversation with them, learned a lot from each other. It was really interesting.
What did
I
they
hear
do?
Mr. Kelly went to a breakfast with them this morning.
Free breakfast.
There you go.
Good challenge.
It's ready for Saturday.
So that's it for my somewhat lengthy superintendent's
Okay,
report.
great, thank you. Okay, so now it's time for public participation. Anyone in the public who has any questions or comments pertaining to the schools, this is your time to stand up and state your name and address and tell us what's on your mind. Yes, front row.
Hi, Antonia Grasso, 44 Oak Street. I wanted to raise a topic with this group about the use of Westwood recreation space for the summer camp at the high school. So I've been talking with the director of Westwood Rec, who just had registration for camp on Saturday. And I understand it's currently licensed for 250 students, students really. And they are oversubscribed significantly. They have experienced significant growth. It's a wonderful camp. High school students become the counselors. It's a really good experience for the kids, and they have just blown up in subscription to the point where registration opened at 10 a.m. and at 10:10 I was on a wait list for a week. Just to give a sense of really how much interest there is. They have tried to open a playground, secondary camp, if you will, at the Deerfield to kind of accommodate some of the demand. But again, then, you don't have the whole grade in one place, it's split, you don't know if your friends are gonna be there. And I understand that there are some space constraints at the high school in the summer. They have to redo the floors or renovate rooms or paint and whatnot, and there are other programs there, but I would like to advocate to increase the amount of space given to rec to accommodate the demand. I mean, even now, there are people, dozens of people on the wait list, and it's a town camp. It really should be for the residents, which are the student body. So I don't know if anything can be done for this year, but I'd love for something to be done for the following year. I do plan, there's some other things I'd like to advocate for that I plan to go to the rec commission meeting in the fall about, and this will be one of the topics as well. But I have been in touch with the director, and I'd like to find if there's a way to get more space for the camp to get everyone there and everyone who is interested in being at the camp accommodated in the same space. And then the second thing I wanted to raise is I know, March has given us all sorts of storms. But one of the other things that has come up is as part of the subscription to the camp for the summer, you sign up for slots, 7 a.m. to 5:30, 12 o'clock to 5:30, or 9 to 3, and usually the 12 o'clock to 5:30 slot you sign up for if you're going to do the enrichment program. So everyone, I'm here with some parents, and we all signed up for the 12 to 5:30 because we knew enrichment, which was opening up this week, would be taking registration, and we would do the 4 weeks of the morning for our kids, and then they'd go over to rec. A day before enrichment opened up their registration, they, because of the snow date, moved their start date a week later. So now there's this disconnect between people who have subscribed to the half day. I know it makes your head spin a little bit. They subscribe to the half day for camp and now there's nothing to cover. And I think rec didn't know, there was no coordination between the school for enrichment and the town for the town camp. So it's in a holding pattern. And so you can tell from all the, I think even just the oversubscription, I think it's a lot of stress that the parents are in. And the fact that it's all done in March, where pretty much all the other camps I think are done for the summer. I think that just wanting to allow for some accommodation to coordinate a little bit better between the town camp and the enrichment program, because people really do look at them as like one bundled event for the kids for the summer.
Yeah, so I'll say that I met with Nicole Banks today from Recreation, and I'm aware that our change in the date for the summer program is causing some difficulties, and I would just say, we're gonna need a couple weeks to try to figure it out. You know, our problem is that we, of course, can't start our summer enrichment program until school's over, and the teachers are done with the school year because they're the ones who teach in the summer enrichment program. So we have to work that out, but, you know, we're gonna see if there's something that we can do to try to help folks out with that. So, and I know what we did, is that we were opening up our summer enrichment program registration, and then when we realized that there was this problem, we closed our registration so that we could try to figure out something. The space issue, we do collaborate with Rec, and you know, I know that they would like to have, I think they said 3 extra classrooms. We're seeing if we can work with them in that. I mean, we'd like to be flexible. I frankly don't know if it's possible to take that Deerfield program and move the whole thing. I don't really have much insight into that, but I can look into it. And so, yeah, we would like to try to be flexible to the extent we can. I would just mention that we have a lot of, it's not just about cleaning the buildings, although it is a lot about cleaning the buildings. So we have our facilities, they're large, and we rely on the summer to do all of the maintenance, the, you know, capital projects, the cleaning, and time is short. So, you know, our summer program at the middle school, by the time the summer enrichment program's over, we're down to about 3 weeks at the middle school, and it's really tight. So that's a constraint, but the other constraint is that we have our own district program, so we have extended school year as part of our special education program at several of our buildings. And so again, that we're not able to accommodate everything, but we're in communication with REC. I have asked Nicole what her needs are. We're gonna see if we can be helpful.
Okay, thank you. There was someone in the back.
Hi, Christina Martin, 23 Brookfield Road.
We didn't see you back there. You're usually in the front row.
I'm here. Came in a little late. I just wanted to say regarding the building project and being sure that this initial component gets approved in town meeting. I think it's really important to have like some grassroots like advocates that you're working with, like people in the community who have whatever your bullet points are, whether it's, and I don't know exactly how the relationship works, if you can ask PTO presidents to do it, or see if the principals can recommend a parent who might be interested as far as the school goes, but finding people in the community who can help get this message out, because I'm tuned into it, like I'm paying attention, but I'm here most months also. And I was really surprised by how many of my peers didn't know like that the tours were going on. And a lot went out, things went home. It was in the bulletin, it was in the principal's post, it was in the town paper. Like I saw it, but people are busy. Sometimes they don't look at things till they're a week or two late. And having like that high touch of, I'm gonna go to this meeting tonight, like come with me and we'll go get drinks afterwards. Or so, like trying to make it a thing so that people are paying attention. Because I feel like if we don't get that vote passed, then we're sort of in a bad situation regardless. So.
It's a nice point. I think we brought that up at the high school PTO. We were just there on Monday. And basically when Emily does her presentation, those who are there become unofficial ambassadors. And I think I can just speak to the high school PTO where they seem very receptive, and people like you, your friends have you to keep them in the loop. So we appreciate that. And I think there are a lot of folks out there who are being helpful in this process.
I think the comment is well taken. 2/3 vote at some town meetings isn't easy. I mean, some of them are crazy. So, everything can make sense, but you go in there and it's a bad night for some people. So I do think some thought needs to be given, maybe not by the administration, but by others, parents and others too. It's quite frankly a political campaign, to make sure you get people out there with 2/3. You're not going to just show up randomly. And if all the people who show up, really that concerned about this issue. So I think it's really a very, very important concern, and you can't wait till the last minute to do it. And I think, so.
And I think that's been a lot of the push right now, is getting to every PTO, every event, every newspaper, right? Hopefully people are gonna be sick to death, right?
That is the goal.
That is.
They just want me to stop talking about buildings. That is my
Right.
goal. But I mean, to
But-
your point, Charlie, it does come down, with town meeting structure, it comes down to like who shows up and sits in the seat that night and,
Well, I think the work you've done so far is fantastic, Every effort has been made, nothing more can be done, but I honestly believe it's gonna take PTOs to call 10 people and call up, get the vote. I mean, it's gonna take that kind of organization.
And if the weather's bad, that's gonna be.
And so I think an effort, and maybe some of the school committee members can take the lead, but it's going to take that kind of work with hopefully PTO people and parents who care to do campaigning, to get the vote up, make sure they're there, because this could easily happen at a town meeting. 2/3 is a hard vote to get sometimes.
Anyone else? Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Hi there, Kate Wynn, 10 Cedar Hill Drive. Just to kind of piggyback on what's already been said, the upcoming town meeting, I just think people are going to be predisposed to say no to anything. Like if you put it out there that you wanted to practice your pitch to some people, I think it's going to be really important to get your pitch right, because people are going to be very, from what I've seen, not in the mood to say yes to things, potentially. So, and I do think this is a terrific opportunity that we don't want to miss. Also, I wanted to say I went to the tours of the elementary schools. Such a great idea. Like, so great, really educational and terrific to get to spend time with staff. So I just want to say thank you for that, because it was really great, and I'd love to help with your pitch if I can at all. Great. Oh, and I think we heard cocktails, like better snacks, would get people to the meetings also.
But you both make great points. We need you to continue to make this pitch. It sounds like you have a favorable opinion, and if you know there are folks out there who will have other struggles with the town, I hope you can help them parse this out from what their other concerns are. Because this is, as you know, we're preaching to the choir. You all are here because you are interested in what's going on with the schools, and I think advocates for the schools. So I appreciate anything that you can do out there to ensure that we get that vote. So thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. So moving on to discussion items. First thing is the update on the district goal, professional development to support student social and emotional learning. That's you.
I did, I shared that.
Reinforcement from our technology.
No longer see what I need to see. Allison, you're right.
I'm just gonna start talking.
Okay.
So we're talking about, we had a number of goals this year. Goal 8 is one of them, and it's the final goal, saying goal around professional culture. And the language for these goals is interesting. I'll read it since it's not up on the screen. It says, to develop and support practices that acknowledge the diverse backgrounds, identities, strengths, and challenges of students. And just so you have a sense of where that comes from, through the Department of Education, there are published sort of expectations and standards for leaders. And this is from a rubric for leaders throughout the state. It applies to principals, superintendents, assistant superintendents, directors of student services. So this is something that's sort of a benchmark of what a positive professional culture looks like. Okay. We broke this into 3 specific action steps, which you're going to see momentarily. But I'm going to talk about other things because we weren't there. And say that all 3 of our action steps this year had to do with professional development. But that in fact, this is a goal that we're taking steps to achieve in a lot of different ways. So I'll tell you about a few highlights. I think these are all worth noting. These are things that the various administrators chimed in about. First of all, our high school had started a program called Courageous Conversations, and it really had its inception last year, I think, Sean, or 2 years ago, last year. And they've expanded that program and they've started to do some really interesting things. The idea is to engage students and staff in kind of activities and conversations that raise awareness and understanding about kind of diversity within the school. So this year, for example, they invited a Holocaust survivor who spoke with the entire student body and had some debrief conversations afterward. I don't know if you got the chance to see her presentation. The middle school folks brought the middle school kids up as well. It was powerful. I'll be honest, I was kind of skeptical about the notion of 800 middle school kids holding still and listening to a speaker for an hour. It was tremendous. It was tremendous. And I think a really worthwhile activity. In addition, a real emphasis was placed in the high school on Mental Health Awareness Week this year. And I think that that's an important aspect of kind of supporting all students. And they also expanded their Ally Youth programming this year. Unfortunately, one of those expansion efforts, which was a student panel where kids who are alums from the high school were coming back to talk a little bit about ways in which they felt supported and maybe didn't feel so supported by their fellow students. And that got snowed out. So one of the best news that I think the high school has had that we haven't been able to actualize. So we're hopeful that we can kind of get that back on board for next year. And really the idea again is what do we do to help make sure that kids are treating each other kindly and that the adults in the building are doing what we can to facilitate that. At the elementary school, all of our elementary schools really worked hard at their efforts around Inclusive Schools Week this year, which is, inclusive is a big term. The Inclusive Schools Week rolls out of disability awareness and really helping support that.
And just a quick note, so this year the kind of concept was this idea of stand up or sit down, if that's your mechanism of transport, around inclusion, and the idea being that kids who maybe didn't know somebody with a disability could make a new friend, could sit with someone new at lunch, could reach out, those kind of things that are very within the scope of young kids to understand and practice. And we got really nice feedback that people liked those kind of grassroots things as opposed to posters and other kind of things that adults think about. So I learned a little bit that those are the kind of things that kids remember too, right? So I thought that was a successful foray. So we'll keep doing that.
I also wanted to give a shout out to our librarians who started some conversation and then at the Hanlon School with some support from Hanlon folks taking a look at their collections in the libraries. And the idea is, kids, when going to the library, checking out books, they should see books that will act as mirrors and windows. A window gives you an opportunity to see part of the world you haven't seen before. It's a way to kind of get out of Westwood if you don't have a car or an income, and explore other places and see what the universe is like. And mirrors, things that reflect your own experience and your background, kids who look like you in books. And so really looking at our collections and seeing, do they really represent an increasingly diverse community that is here in Westwood? So that's some of the stuff going on outside of what are our 3 action steps right here. So again, all of these focus on professional development. First around supporting a diverse student body, including our LGBTQ kids and students with social emotional needs, which is, as I think about it, pretty much everybody. Also impacting the evaluating the impact of some professional development we learned that this year focused on the elementary school and in particular the mental health of younger kids. And finally, looking at training to support a new program in its pilot year in middle schools. A peer leadership program that's modeled on a program through the Anti-Defamation League called the World of Difference Institute. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that first, actually. Got a quote from a young man in grade 7. This is one of our peer leaders this year. And I want to tell you a little bit about what this program is and where it came from. This peer leadership model is based on a program that's been implemented in a lot of communities throughout Massachusetts, including communities right next door that are very much like Westwood. So Medfield's got it, Natick's got it. And it really looks at how do you help kids learn some skills, kids who have some leadership kind of qualities, learn the skills they need to go into classrooms and teach other kids using a series of activities and lessons about how to treat each other well and how to get along even if they have kind of differences. And so that's kind of the gist of the thing. Up to 30 students can be selected per year. Last year, we went through a process where a sort of ad hoc committee of teachers interested in thinking about peer interactions at the middle school and how we support each other looked into this program. We actually went out and did some site visits in Natick at the middle school and the high school. And Natick's been an interesting story. They started this about 10 years ago. And it was so, it took hold so well that even though it's predominantly a middle school program, when kids left the middle school and graduated to the high school, they basically started it up again on their own. They lobbied the administration and said, we want to keep this going. So our staff went out and visited and talked to those students to ask about, do you think this is really making a difference? Do you see it having an impact? And across the board, they said yes. We got to see them both being trained and in their role as peer trainers, sort of working with other kids. Kind of cool stuff. So we have a small group of faculty advisors who volunteered to do this year. Right now, we've got the main advisor is Mr. Lamb, engineering teacher, who's also MathCounts guy, so he was here for a while now. And he's been joined by one of our guidance counselors, Mr. Bushy, and the reading specialist, Ms. Robbins. So that's the team right now. They're terrific. Mr. Lamb, as the lead advisor, went to a training. I'm going to correct it. Oh, you're back. We went to a training this summer as an advisor to get some background, and then they went through an application process this fall. We weren't sure how it was going to go the first time out, but actually there was more interest than we could accommodate, which is great news. We also ran a faculty training so that the teachers involved, both kind of the teachers of the 7th and 8th graders who are going to be spending time outside of class to do this, but also the teachers of 6th graders where these lessons are going to go on would know kind of how to support the program. Additionally, talking with Mr. Giannetti about the value of this, we felt like it was a good opportunity for our staff to gain some skills in terms of navigating conversations that might come up in an advisory program. Sometimes difficult topics come up and kids talk about stuff, and this is a good opportunity for teachers to learn, how to manage that in a way that's fair and doesn't sort of pit kids against each other or make anybody feel bad about their beliefs or values. Got a couple pictures of kids in the program. This is in the training session. You're working hard, and just in case you think it all looks very serious, they seem to be having a pretty good time. So a lot of what they're doing, they do activity-wise involves role play and things like that. Fun stuff. One of our advisors, and Robin's clearly very enthusiastic. You can tell because there are many exclamation points. But she's excited about what she's seeing, and honestly, if you get the chance to see this group of kids in action, I'm feeling very lucky they invited me to go along to a statewide youth Congress where this group will join other groups like it from without the state with big meeting in April. I'm excited to see what that looks like. In terms of kind of ongoing nature, this year is a pilot year. We'll want to take stock, see what's working well and what would work, and maybe make adjustments to either training or implementation for next year. That's what we'll be doing with this year. And that's it for on the ADL side. Professional development, I want to talk about a couple different things. One is this idea of support for LGBTQ students. And really the focus here is creating a safe and supportive environment for students and families. And we've partnered with a couple of groups. One is right out of the Department of Education. There's a group called the Safe Schools Group. And they do this training all over the state to basically help faculty members figure out how to make sure that they're not doing things that are making kids feel unwelcome and that they're supporting kids. Examples of that may include thinking about how do you talk to kids about assignments that relate to family in a way that doesn't exclude kids who might not come from a family that looks like yours or that's the family that you grew up with. Or, if kids say things that are not so nice to each other, like that's so gay, what do you do about that? How do you intervene in that moment? So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing with staff. We have 3 sessions planned for teachers at Thurston this year. So far, one of them's gotten snowed out twice, we've been to move the dial down the road, but we'll see what we can do. In addition, we had a few workshop offerings that were optional for teachers to sign up for during the November full-day staff, so that was a way of getting to other kind of throughout the district, not just at the middle school. And finally, I mentioned at the high school, there was an expansion of Allergy activities. And that's not in the professional development bucket, but I think it's important to mention just because I think it's something that raises awareness and gets people reminded about keeping an eye out for kids who are at a difficult point in their life and may need our support. All right. Another major emphasis this year in terms of professional development is our work around supporting young kids around mental health. Dr. Nadja Riley is a local clinician, researcher. She actually works out of the William James College, which is the place that our interface program runs out of. So we're a really reputable organization. She's published a book recently called Anxiety and Depression in the Classroom, a Teacher's Guide to Fostering Self-Regulation in Young Children. I think that's the whole title of it. And she's running a few sessions for our elementary staff this year. One is looking at anxiety and depression in young kids. Usually you don't think about those as problems for younger children. You think about them as the onset being more in adolescence, but that's not always the case. And I think teachers need some skills to be able to know when can I work with a student in my class, when do I need to refer them out for extra support, what are the things I can do that are preventative and protective for kids. Included in that, she's running a session for our folks on infusing joy and play in the classroom. I think sometimes in Massachusetts, which is, we are reminding people of the #1 school state in the country in terms of academic achievement, we might need to carve out space and time to think about things like, fun, levity, and making sure kids get to stay kids for a while, and doing that in both a structured and non-structured way. So that's part of what she's going to help us think about. We're running a parent panel next week for elementary parents, where Dr. Riley will be joined by members of our school community, and really the focus there is partnership. How do parents work together with schools to help raise kids who are both resilient and kind? And then thanks to the Foundation for Education, we were able to buy a whole bunch of copies of her book and run book groups throughout the district for teachers. So this has been a really exciting and robust opportunity for us this year. In addition, we've had other presenters and topics that are kind of in that bucket of social and emotional stuff, including some sessions on mindfulness, on social and emotional learning, on principles of APA, and if you remember from our last meeting, that's applied behavioral analysis. It's basically a strategy used within teaching specifically for kids on the autism spectrum. But those strategies actually turn out to be pretty useful even outside of that universe. So it's a way of looking at behavior that isn't working very well in a classroom environment, analyzing it and thinking about replacing it with better behavior, right? How do we take what we see kids doing, and sometimes they're doing these things to express their wants and needs to us in a way that's not very functional. How do we replace that with something that's more functional and going to help them more in their school and life? And then finally, I once again want to throw out Mental Health Awareness Week at Westwood High School was not a professional development initiative, but it was an opportunity to sort of really remind people that our kids are busy and they have a lot on their plates, and we need to kind of keep an eye on them and take stock. Some of the things going on. I wanted to sort of take a look at what we've learned so far and what we think it means. A big topic that sort of emerged out of this work is this idea of social emotional learning, which is yet another set of letters. In the world of education, we like letters and abbreviations, and SEL is all over the place right now. And really what it refers to is a set of competencies that are designed to help you be successful in school, but also outside of school and the rest of your life. Problem solving, maintaining good relationships, having this sort of self-awareness to know when you're really making somebody mad or upset. Some of us work on these our whole lives. But it's a big theme right now. And we are finding that our faculty are really, really interested in having more time to learn more about this. When we offered a few of these workshops during that November day, they were oversubscribed. We had to turn people away from introductory workshops on SEL and mindfulness. Our Professional Development Council, that's the group that surveys folks and comes up with courses that we offer internally so people can kind of keep up their licensure and certification and also kind of continue their education and growth as educators. Our survey results were striking. 61% of elementary faculty, 77% of middle school faculty, and 62% of high school faculty who responded indicated that SEL was an area of priority and interest for them, that they really wanted to take class and learn more. So that's compelling. And this is an area of concern nationwide, as well as in Massachusetts. The state has joined a collaborating states initiative around SEL. And the goal of that is to try and work together with a group of states to articulate actual guidelines and standards to make resources available to educators, and really to sort of help make sure we're taking care of this part of kids' education that's important. So, I said people were hungry for more. This is kind of quotations, just giving me a sense of what we're hearing from teachers in terms of the less quantitative and more qualitative feedback. When you talk about social emotional learning, it really takes three different forms, both here and elsewhere. There are sort of standalone lessons. There are things we do, like Open Circle at the elementary school. It's a social competency curriculum. There are lessons that are designed that people do once a week. It's also things that are integrated. So many of the new standards that we have in the state of Massachusetts include the new frameworks have these things called practice standards, and often within them are ideas around social emotional learning. So a great example is that perseverance in the context of mathematics, right? And we saw some examples of what can happen if you learn some good perseverance skills, right? And so many really good teachers of math don't just give you strategies, they actually sort of teach you explicitly, you're going to have to struggle, and here's some ways you can get yourself to struggle in order to get through this. That math is something you can do, but you have to be willing to fail at it a little bit before you succeed. And then finally, there's regular classroom practices, routines, and norms. So we teach kids explicitly how to engage in a conversation or a discussion. You raise your hand, have you acknowledge something that somebody else said and build upon their point, so that you can show you were actually listening when they made that point instead of just waiting to talk, right? Those are things that really good teachers point out to kids so that they learn those skills and can use them later in life. So what we're recommending is actually to incorporate within our curriculum review cycle a curriculum review of our social emotional learning, and really thinking about it as a curriculum and instruction sort of part of what we do. I want to be really explicit that I'm saying this is K-12, not pre-K-12, which is a really conscious decision. And that's because if you look at pre-K, all of the pre-K framework and much of what we do in pre-K is just social emotional. That's kind of their bread and butter. In fact, if we wanted to get a group of consultants to teach us how to do that, they're probably the people to do it. They really get this stuff. We do it every day for a lot of the day. So we're not leaving them out. We know that we know they're in great shape and they can actually inform us. And then they kind of help us build a foundation. In fact, the kids that come through our preschool, we feel like one of the things we've talked to our sort of staff about are they really do seem to have a leg up because we do a really good job this year. I I want to acknowledge that back in 2015, Principal Bevan at the high school and then acting Principal Kyle Grady at the middle school did do a review around sort of mental health. And I want to sort of draw a distinction. That the review that they engaged in during that time, when they were representing parents and teachers and other kind of educators, was really about thinking about how do we identify and support at-risk kids. So it was more thinking about our services and kind of programmatic supports. So things like the SOS program around screening for suicidality and depression. What do we do around referral when kids seem to be struggling? How does that actually work? And thinking about the sort of program continuity between the middle and the high school. How do we make sure we're talking to each other, sharing resources, all that good stuff. Okay? So that was the focus there. This proposed review is a little broader. It's really sort of saying these are things that are out there that we're kind of doing already for all kids. We just want to make sure we're doing them as well as possible, that the curriculum is the best curriculum, and that we're using those sort of good instructional practices that we think are the best practices, and to make improvements where we see the need to make improvements at all levels. So, less about at-risk, more about everything. I'm actually proposing this as an expedited review, so we're going to get rolling, if we can get going on it, where we do some outreach in the month of April to pull together a committee, and then we really run the investigative work and looking at our materials May to August, do some site visits to look at what's happening in other districts and communities in September and October, and really be ready to roll out recommendations in November, which is in time for next year's budget cycle. So that's a very intentional timeline and a speedy timeline. I mean, SEL curriculum isn't as massive as, say, our math curriculum, so I think we can do that and achieve it, but it also puts us in a good position to be thoughtful heading into next year. That was that question. That's good because I'm almost at the end. I was going to say thank you before questions, and I really did want to share a sincere thank you. I feel like I have the opportunity for Rose and others to come up and talk about things related to mental health and social emotional things as other people have had, and I feel like the committee's been tremendously supportive. We've gotten positions added and programs added. We did pull in the second step, which in part as a bullying prevention curriculum at the middle school, SOS as a suicide prevention curriculum. We added an adjustment counselor and a social worker, and next year's budget had an ABA tutor. Those are positions designed to really help us do this work. And, we think there's some good news about efficacy. So I want to share something with you. I'm not writing it down because, like I said, it's early in the year. But we are seeing, typically the place where you see the most dramatic things is at the high school level. That's where sort of kids in crisis are living in crisis. And we've seen a reduction in the number of kids going out for hospitalizations, and it's fairly dramatic. So back in 2015, 2016, we had 22 students. The 16-17 year, the total number of students was 17. And as of right now, and really about 3/4 of the way for the year, we only have 5 kids out this year. So I hope that stays a stable trend, and we continue to work in that direction, and ideally work toward meeting that level of intervention support. I'm an optimist, so we've also seen at the high school, since they started collecting data, a reduction in repeat hospitalizations, as well as a reduction in the sort of length of stay. I'm leery to make much of the length of stay because I feel like that could have more to do with insurance than actual anything else. But I think the lack of repeat visits is good news too. So I would take it. So my goal is if we do something systematic, and Abby's department is absolutely critical, and the student services department is sort of all over that. That we will be able to continue good work in that direction. So, yeah, good questions.
Well, I think you answered my question at the end. I just was saying, I've always been impressed with the programs that we have, all that is being done. And I was just kind of interested as you were going through this, what can we do better with this effort? And you've already kind of answered it with results, but I think that would be, it makes sense, but, if you consider all the problems that are there that you can reach out to, and more teachers being involved in recognizing things at younger ages, what difference might it make? And You've already started to answer some of that.
Yeah, it's just one other question. So, 3 years ago, lose track of time, you focused on 6 to 12 programming, now it's very curriculum. Is there any programmatic piece of this review, or is it just curriculum instruction, I guess?
Really, I mean, it's hard to fully separate
Right.
the two
Right.
out. I think our goal is really just to put into some
Okay.
instruction, because that's where we haven't done this
Right.
ever. You know, we're always open to.
One informs the other, right?
Feedback.
Vice versa, so I think they'll both be on the table, and I also think looking at the span, like the 12 years, is the other important
Right.
thing. What's a student's experience, a family's experience, right? I think that we have yet to do, what will come.
And this is more, this is probably an outcome, but I think, like, we hear this and people get this intuitively, but I think at some point, like educating, once we get through on the other side of this, educating the community a little more, because I think people get this intuitively, of
Yeah.
course, but like if you say SCL to
Yeah.
anyone else outside of this room, they'll probably be like, what?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think people have this perception
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we're all like, you know, holding hands. and
Right,
stuff.
exactly.
And it's really not that.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I think people are also concerned, you have to be mindful, there's limited amount of curriculum, limited amount of resources, and this may be very interesting, but, you know, you gotta be careful that
Absolutely. And actually, part of the reason we're interested in this is because we do have that sense right now. I mean, we're talking about with our leaders from Ireland this morning, we're trying to jam 10 gallons of stuff in a 5-gallon bucket, including the existing SEL curriculum. So part of what we want to be thinking about are those strategies that are less focused on the standalone and more on the, but how do you integrate some of this stuff in a meaningful way? We also think it works better when you do that with kids. You can teach them teachers gave us some feedback about Open Circle that was interesting. They're like, you know, kids can talk the talk, but then they go out on the playground and still do whatever they were going to do in the first place. So
Maybe worth creating that hour every week for 5 minutes every morning that is a different thing. We may get time back in the end, you know, we don't know. But we're gonna look at it.
Good.
absolutely. We're not going to stop doing that. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
First reading of the life-threatening allergy
Yes,
policy.
I'm gonna slide over 2 slides. Good luck. Slide thing.
Oh, see, scroll it. Once again, getting up to rescue us.
on the same.
Thank you, Steve.
It's on, yeah, on my,
So you have in front of you a life-threatening allergy policy, the LTAC, to those in the know, that's the acronym. And what I want to do is just give you a quick historical overview of how we got here, and also explain that this is probably a 2-part project. So probably 2 months ago, I was approached by some parents who said, you know, we have a student with a life-threatening allergy, and we went and looked in your policy manual, and we could not find guidance to help us successfully advocate for our child. That's crazy, it's gotta be in there. I called just up and, that's crazy, it's gotta be in there. And sure enough, it was not in there. So at the last big policy review, it appears that consolidation happened from perhaps old things into a larger wellness policy, and there is not a life-threatening allergy policy currently.
Yes, let's do that.
I'm just gonna be honest about that. So we reflected on that very honestly with the family and said that certainly we'd be happy to begin the process of remedying that. Emily and I had a chance to meet with them again, got great input. So what I would say is this is stage 1. This is a very broad life-threatening allergy policy where the school committee is essentially directing us to create guidelines for the management of life-threatening allergies in the school setting. So this would be a cousin to, if you remember back when the bullying law came in, you approved a short, tight policy that directed us to develop guidelines. So that's the mechanism here. And I'm just going to go through very briefly why we're approaching it this way, okay? So essentially, the language in the policy draft you have here says establish a school-wide prevention and emergency management plan. And in allergy world, management is the term, right? You cannot say there will never be an allergic reaction. You can manage a chronic lifetime condition. So we're talking about management here. Similarly, this will have to be a staged, developmentally set of guidelines. So what is appropriate at an elementary level would be different from middle school and would be very different than high school kids who are going off into the world as adults and need to manage their life-threatening allergies more independently. So it becomes kind of a matrix of guidelines as you start to think about it. Finally, the best practice in the field is that there's really almost 3 tiers of things you have to think about. So one is minimizing your risk of exposure. So again, we're never saying there will never be an allergic reaction. We're minimizing risk. And that's a much more nuanced and broad kind of conception. Similarly, we're talking about educating the whole community. So we'll go through the stakeholders, but it gets pretty big from the cookies at the back table at the school committee to, field trips, right? And then finally, you can't ignore the planning for individual students in the context. So you can have big, broad context, medium, and individual. And all of those will need to be addressed. So you're not having to solve all those things, you're just directing us to workers. So the action would be for you to review this policy, go through a normal process, and direct us to create these guidelines. The action that would kick off would be having us convene stakeholder meetings, maybe more than one, to get input from all relevant constituents. And I put at the top of the list parents, because they're sending their children to us who have life-threatening allergies. They're trusted, right? Similarly, we would include students developmentally appropriately with parent consent to get their input. But then you get pretty big, pretty fast. Food services, buildings and grounds, right? The cleaning solutions in buildings, transportation, the van vendors, the bus vendors, and then all of our folks, teachers, instructional assistants, principals, guidance counselors, special ed teachers, and then the medical side, nursing, and we consult with the town physician. So certainly that is not, a one-day kind of project, and we can't give that to you all in a nutshell, but we would be happy to engage in this process with the goal of having that complete for the start of school in September. Questions?
Are there other school systems that have done this 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Yes, and I have all their policies, because we're members of this thing, and we're going to use some of them to steal great ideas. I have 3 drafts ready to go, and what I would tell you is he's very willing to coordinate and collaborate on this, because it's going to go across all our different departments together. But we're in, and I did just want to highlight the focus of this kind of management is going to be both prevention, education, awareness, communication, as well as emergency response. People immediately jump to emergency response. You don't have to do emergency response if you've done all these other steps. So we're in it.
Have we had experience with some of these problems?
Yes, and I have to tell you this, the principals manage these things every day and coordinate, communicate with parents and families, and there's not a school that doesn't have a student with a health plan for a specific allergy. Yep. we work on it already.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
So I have a question. I'm a little new to this
Yep.
policy. So I'll be frank, this sounds more like guiding principles. There's nothing I can argue with here. But it doesn't sound, so will the guidelines come back to this committee?
Yeah,
Or not?
yeah, we're happy to look at that.
So that's what we do with bullying, right? We have our
Okay.
bullying policy, and then the policy basically says that we'll come up with a prevention plan.
Okay.
And then the plan came
Okay.
back, and we, right?
It's important because I think somebody would say, hey, I need to know the answer to X question, and we have no foundational anything to say
Yeah.
where we got our answer from.
Okay.
Or a reference point that's like relevant and current and based. There's some documents from the DOE that you can reference, and we just need to get those all in everybody's hands.
And the parents who came to you saying, you don't have the policy, were they familiar with, other school systems that had them? Is
They're on
that?
the internet, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's-
They're worried about their child, and we're very respectful and just said, we'd like to ask you to please look at this. So we're happy to do it.
Well,
Thank you, Abby.
I think we just ask you to proceed. then
Yeah,
this would
so
be-
it's your first reading, we'll talk about it in a month, and we'll proceed. And there's plenty of preparatory work to do until
In the
you
interim.
take a vote. Yes,
Sure.
that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
action items.
Action items. Okay. All right, action items, approval of the minutes. We did the minutes.
I just make a motion to approve the minutes of February 15th, 2000.
Okay, do we have a second? Is there any discussion on the minutes? No? Okay, all in favor? Okay, we're all in favor of the minutes from February 15th, good. Transfer of special ed reserve funds.
Turn it over to you.
Okay. Early this year, we set up a special education reserve fund. Basically, this is where we get to still retain access to our Medicaid reimbursement fund that we receive from the state every year. So what this fund does is it creates a holding account for us that these funds go into. Otherwise, they would go right into free cash and we would lose access to it. So what this vote is a vote by the school committee first and then the selectmen to transfer funds from this holding account into another account the town set up called the Special Education Cost Account. That account we have direct access to and we can charge against like we used to do with our regular Medicaid. Now, hopefully, our plan is to just do one transfer per year. Like this is new to all of us this year. So I view this as like we're doing one transfer per year unless otherwise necessary to still retain access to the Medicaid account. We're not taking all of the funds out of the reserve account. There's still funds available in there. And we're still receiving some reimbursement during the course of the year, which will continue to go directly into the holding account.
So what happens if you don't spend everything you transfer? Or will you?
No, that rolls over.
Oh, so you can roll it up?
Yeah, it will roll over just like our old Medicaid account. It's really an accounting adjustment that we had to do this year.
Okay, so we need a vote on this.
I'll make a motion to transfer special education reserve funds.
Yeah, there's a dollar amount.
Oh, sorry.
It's actually in the packet. It's a page after the that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, here it is.
You got it.
Right here.
All right, so make a motion, Westwood Public School Committee hereby authorizes the transfer of $250,000 from special education reserve funds to special education cost account.
Okay, that's your motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion on this issue? Well, this is funny. What's happening here?
It's late.
Okay. All in favor? Tony, you okay?
Yeah.
Everybody? Okay. Set.
Field trip?
All right, grade 7 field trip to Providence.
Yeah, you have a field trip proposal here for a 7th grade trip to the Trinity Repertory Company in Providence, Rhode Island, and since it's an out-of-state trip, we're bringing it forward to the school committee for your approval. It's a day trip.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve this trip?
Oh,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Providence trip.
To go see Ragtime?
yeah.
Second, any further discussion on this? No, all in favor? Okay, good, set. All right. And last agenda item, does anybody have anything that they want to bring to the rest of the committee's attention in terms of what your liaison responsibilities? I guess.
Yeah, I just have one action. I mean, I didn't, we did have a follow-up item last month about the screening. We can maybe talk about that next month.
We're gonna put it on for April,
Okay.
yeah, sorry about that.
Perfect.
I think we wouldn't do anything until next January, so we're
Okay.
plenty of time.
And I think the only thing I would bring up is, and I brought it up earlier, was the presentation that you did to the high school PTO that your roadshow, basically, I thought was excellent, and so I think that it was especially well received at the high school PTO. And
Cancel.
Canceled. Well, you'll get to see it if we get a report, so.
Right.
But she did a great job
Yeah.
at Downey, so.
Good.
She did a great job too, Martha Jones, and I think the comment made earlier, beginning to get like a fact sheet for people who want to educate their neighbors and others, that would be a good idea to start working on something like that that could be made available to PTO members and others who, could explain some of the details.
Great idea.
One of the the more interesting piece is when Emily was explaining the size of classrooms, you know, and Heath had the number to, 868 square feet, and the minimum guideline is 950, so, I mean, that was a pretty powerful statement on how undersized all these classrooms were, which were good in 1948, but, really not appropriate today.
Now they're not even ready.
Right.
In a lot of cases.
It was impressive that she had those numbers right in his head too, when we asked him. Yeah.
Me too.
The other thing was the art room, which is in the old locker room. This is how we're teaching art, it's the only available thing, and the teachers who are working with kids in closets, because that was the only space available.
Converted closets, they're not all in closets. I want to make that clear, but yeah, things that were formerly closets, yes, and now are also. But
Yeah, my quick question, on these class trips, so, it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but if the kids can't afford it, is there like a fund available?
we
for kids?
do cover the cost if the kid can't afford it. We want everybody to live on the trip. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, well, I think if you guys are ready, we can make a motion to
Ready.
adjourn. Stop, there is one more announcement. We gotta open the meeting back up.
We just want to announce to the public that we're going to be having a festive reception for Mr. Kelly on April 5th from 6 to 8 in the high school library. Refreshments, perhaps a few words.
No, there'll be coffee, tea, and water.
And maybe after the reception, we'll do something else. So everyone is invited, spread the word.
Now you can go home.
All right.